Good morning. We're coming to you live from Hindustan Times headquarters in New Delhi. And today we're talking about what actually everybody is talking about. The government's recent notification to ban slaughter of cattle at animal markets. As we know, over the past 2 days, this notification has garnered tremendous amounts of protests, anger, political introspection and heckling, etc. Today we are going to talk about one specific thing about this ban. Late last evening, agencies and sources reported that the government is rethinking its cattle slaughter ban to exclude the slaughter of buffaloes from this entire notification. Why is the government doing it? Why is the slaughter of buffaloes important? What are the political ramifications of this beef ban? What are the economic ramifications of any such ban? Today we have with us our Deputy National Editor Ramesh Sharma.
Hi.
And Dhruvo.
Good morning.
We are going to actually also invite you to give your comments, feedback, reactions. Keep writing to us in the comment section. We'll be taking your questions and we'll be taking all comments regarding what you think the government should do. Do you think the beef ban is a good idea? Do you think buffaloes should be excluded and why? We hope to hear from you. Ramesh.
Yeah, see, there's been a lot of noise because the government did a small amendment to the earlier, the cattle ban, what do you call beef slaughter, cow slaughter ban. So the tweaking was about excluding transporting, sale and trade. So what it has been interpreted as is that it's a complete ban on all kinds of meat, beef and buffalo, cow, everything. So as expected, the reactions from the states which have traditionally been, the beef eating states as we call them. So there was a huge uproar in Kerala. They did a public display. There was a political fallout of that. Three youth Congress leaders are suspended. Then, interestingly, the Kerala Chief Minister wrote a letter to all the Chief Ministers of the state saying that this is an interference of the federal polity. This is not in keeping with the federal structure of the constitution. And so he has gone about saying that this is a dangerous trend. What the centre is not taking the elected representatives into confidence before coming out with these amendments. Similar, what do you call the defiance, and this thing has come from West Bengal. Mamata Banerjee has also spoken very strongly about it. There was a beef fest held in IIT Madras in an informal way on the lawns. There was talk about Bangalore holding a similar thing, which was denied, fizzled out, something like that. So yeah, there is a lot of noise over this. The people who eat, I mean that there's an interference with their eating habits. So something what Mamata said, like we don't need it was what's her name. Kerala Chief Minister said, we don't need Delhi or Nagpur to dictate our eating habits. Yeah. So this debate will go on until we, find some kind of a middle ground to, to keep the.
We actually we've started getting a lot of questions and comments, and we request all our viewers and users to keep telling us what you think about the cattle slaughter ban. Do you think buffaloes should be excluded? Do you think the government is doing the right thing? Madhushri Sengupta Chanda is asking us, do you think it is right on the government's part to decide what we should eat or not? And Ravi should agree with me. This is actually the same argument that the Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan and the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee are making. They are saying that not only is this an infringement on personal rights, on the individual's sort of decision to eat what they want to eat, but also they are saying this is an infringement on the state subject.
Yeah, I mean the federal structure basically. So if you go by the chart, we have I think around 8 states that allow.
And this is the chart. If you look at today's Hindustan Times in the nation pages on page number 13, we have a chart of in which state is buffalo slaughter ban, cow slaughter ban, bull slaughter ban. And
there are sub-clauses also. Like in Tamil Nadu, for instance, they allow slaughter of all cattle over 10 years of age. But technically, they don't allow cow slaughter. So if you read the fine print, there are 8 to 10 states that have, in varying degrees, they have allowed cow slaughter or buffalo slaughter. But what is irking people, I think, is that predominantly the beef available to a majority of the people is buffalo. We know that very well, and we know from the export figures, and if you see we have given here the top 5 meat producing states and all that. So there is a big question mark. What happens to the meat trade, what happens to the leather industry, and over and above the larger issue of should we eat or not? What should we eat?
Supriya Mehra has a question. She's saying, if beef is still exported, what sense does it make to ban beef? This is a great question, and this is also a confusion that a lot of us have, that India is the world's largest exporter of beef. But the beef that is exported, Supriya, we should tell you, is not cow meat. The beef that is exported is primarily buffalo meat. In 2014, India became the world's largest exporter of this meat. We displaced Brazil. Today, we export almost a quarter of the world's beef. And this is exactly the rub. And this, we think, is one of the reasons why the government is rethinking the ban on slaughter of buffaloes. Because if the ban on slaughter of buffaloes at animal markets comes into place, and we have reported in Hindustan Times that over 90% of the meat is sourced from these animal markets, then this $5 billion industry of buffalo meat is going to be severely affected. But do you think there are other economic ramifications?
No, there are so many downstream. If you look at it the way there are so many downstream industries, and let's not talk about just employment and export-import figures. There are so many downstream people, the communities and communities that are dependent on this whole industry and for generations. So there is that issue where how do you tackle that? There's a nice question that I see there which says about how do we can we do this by regulating the industry? So if the government steps in, like, see, there are rules, there are very strict rules about slaughterhouses, how they should source it, from where they should source it, whether it should be hygienic, the veterinary aspect of it. But yeah, there could be, it says not to save leather industry, to save employment, but by regulating slaughterhouses.
Sitaram Dhaniwal,
yeah. So that's what I think. If there is a uniformity across the country, yes, we should look at ways of not hurting either or of the parties, and we can still. I mean, it's been there. It's not
and
that.
If you're saying a lot of this for many years have existed informally in the informal sector, in some grey area. You're saying it's a better idea to, instead of a blanket ban, to sort of start regulating.
I would give an analogy of, let's say, suppose you're introducing a new crop, like we have the huge debate over GM crop, right? It's something new which we never had before. But here is a case where for generations you've been eating it, you've been slaughtering it, but there has to be some kind of middle ground about not hurting people's sentiments. Like the public display that happened in Kerala was in bad taste, which everybody agreed, and rightfully they were
suspended. The Congress workers, a calf.
To make a point, why do that? You're eating, in your state it is allowed, go home and eat. I mean, what's there to make a thing point? I mean, that's just a political issue there. So for the optics, if you're doing it, which is, to score political points, but we're not looking at the solution on the ground. We really need to look at it. It is a big issue. It's a huge industry. It employs lakhs of people. And I think the government, the people and the states, I think together can come together. I'm sure there's a middle ground is what I think.
Absolutely. Just to remind our viewers, we are live at the Hindustan Times headquarters in New Delhi. We are today talking about the cattle slaughter ban and why the government is apparently rethinking banning the slaughter of buffaloes as a part of this ban. What are the economic ramifications? Do we think that this is a good move? Do we think this move is going to hurt the industry? Keep letting us know your comments, your questions about the ban on cattle slaughter, about the ban on beef, whether you think it's a good idea, who do you think it will hurt? And if you like this video, share it with your friends. I just want to once again to buffaloes, because we have a comment there from Shumanto who's saying that this is going to hurt the leather industry, right? And the leather industry is a $12 billion industry, employs some lakhs and lakhs of people, etc. And if we see, and I'm going to point the viewers today again at this map that Hindustan Times has on page 13 of its edition. It's also on our website. That 20 of 28 states, actually, with some variation, some clause, they allow the slaughter of buffaloes.
Buffaloes, yes.
So Ramesh, just if you could, and we are with our Deputy National Editor Ramesh Sharma, could just give us some idea of how important it is, buffalo slaughter.
See, as I said, it's also about availability. Buffalo has been the staple, I should say, the staple beef which is available in most of the markets where beef eating is what we call beef is called buff in the normal parlance, where buff has been allowed. Now, if you stop that, leave aside your, the kebabs and your eating this thing. There's a huge ramification on, you're talking about employment, you're talking about job generation. This will definitely impact a lot of people who are employed in the slaughterhouses, in the whole transportation, the downstream industry, which is your leather, your choppers, your bags. Everything gets impacted. Are you going to then start importing leather from this thing? Just think about all those larger economic, the points that it raises. So I don't know if we have thought through these points before we come out with a blanket ban. So on the surface, it looks like a knee-jerk is what I would say. It should have been thought out properly. There should have been alternatives available to people. And I, for instance, think that I was giving an example just now. I'm eating an apple from Himachal. So I should be allowed to import if I'm a buff eater or buffalo meat eater, I should be allowed to import it from Assam or wherever it's allowed, and let the government regulate it, open its own shops, and let's not do a public display of, what do you call it, sacrificing this thing to make a point. You are eating, go ahead, please eat, no problem, but just think about the other person's sentiments, non-eater sentiments, let's say.
I'm just also then going to go back to something that Abdullah Najib Rahman is raising. And this is also, Ramesh, something that Mamata Banerjee raised yesterday when she said she thinks that the timing of this ban is suspicious, that it's coming right before Ramzan. If you could just tell us a little bit about in what ways do questions of demographics and identity come into this cattle slaughter ban?
I don't know if it was purely a timing issue or not, but now that he points about Eid Qurbani, I'm not very sure what is primarily buffaloes or cows or is it goats? I mean, the Qurbani nowadays is primarily this thing. I think it was goats, right? So this ban is specifically, I think, pertains to buffaloes, right? So I don't think so. In larger this thing, I'm not. Pardon me if I'm not, sure about this. But in the larger context, I think it's primarily goats that they do Qurbani nowadays. In the larger groups, probably they do beef slaughtering. But it could impact their.
But also generally that we have been reporting in Hindustan Times as well how the cattle slaughter, any sort of ban is going to hurt meat traders, most of whom are Dalits and Muslims, and they come from these communities.
Right.
And some of the bigger states that have opposed this, say a state like West Bengal, where some 27-28% of the population is Muslim, which has a huge leather industry.
Yes.
This ban can really affect them.
Absolutely. So I'm just saying, if this, it's all in the clause. If you read the sub clauses, it says you cannot transport it for slaughter purposes. You cannot sell it for slaughtering. So what does the man do who's been doing slaughter or who's been doing leather business for long? So I was wondering, why can't these larger, like you have large farms in the West or large meat processing industries? Why can't our own the huge abattoirs that we have across these states? They should, I think, start having their own farms, animal cattle farms.
Right.
You generate, you produce, you feed them, and then utilize them for your industry. That's one way of looking at it. I'm just out of this idea that. Okay, I cannot buy it from you, I cannot transport it, I cannot sell it to a meat guy. So all those guys will have to be absorbed somewhere, right? Probably they'll have to come together, form a cooperative, a huge cooperative in whichever society, wherever state that they're living, and have their own cattle for meat or leather. That's the way I look at it.
For people who are just joining us, we are live from Hindustan Times. We are talking about the cattle slaughter ban. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is the government doing the wrong thing? Is it going to affect the economy, affect the industry? I actually want to take a question now from Hardik. And this question for me is actually at the crux of this sort of cattle slaughter ban, Ramesh, and I want to ask you this. Where Hardik is saying, economics and employment aside, shouldn't our fundamental rights be grounds enough for opposing this ban?
Yeah, I mean, it's got a very, very, very valid point. Like, as I said, if I can get an apple from Himachal to eat, or if I can choose my meat, or this thing. Here, there's a very specific issue of sentiment involved, which was about cow slaughter, which is anyway banned under the constitution, right? So, in those societies in those states where buffalo was being this thing, was allowed. Now with this new amendment to the this laws that you have added, that it cannot be sold for slaughter purpose. Now that stops, puts a brake on the entire, the industry, the whole society, industry, everything that exists around buffalo slaughtering. So yes, I think there has to be a common ground where you cannot stop people from eating what they've been eating for long, right? You just, somebody's eating fish, you just say no, the oceans are warming up, no more fish, so stop eating fish. You get on to dhokla or whatever. So that's not going to work.
Another thing that we wanted to point out is in terms of the kind of stuff that can get affected, right? So yesterday we reported that the government is rethinking the slaughter of buffalo, and it wants to put buffalo outside the purview of this ban. Now, one of the reasons, as Ramesh and I have been talking about, is that buffalo meat is actually a huge revenue earner, and it has a whole set of knock-on effects on other industries. We have done stories before where we have talked about how stuff like cricket bat, stuff like your volleyball, your soaps, apparently half of all products that are sold or exported,
your buttons, everything
uses some form of buffalo hide or buffalo meat.
Bones.
Yeah, so this can have 168 industries can get affected if the ban on buffalo slaughter comes into effect.
Yeah, it'll have its trickle down impact on the lowest of the lowest in the chain. So it's right from big abattoirs, big industries, whether it's fashion, retail. I mean, people will find their way out. They will export from China or Bangladesh or whatever. But the point is, you are killing your own huge industrial, what you call economic potential, which is already existing and which is rising. And if you're going to put a ban on this, the protests have started. I'm sure there are news items coming out that the government may have a rethink on the buffalo aspect of it. So there should be a middle ground, I'm sure, to this thing. Otherwise, it's a very genuine concern of the industry and the people.
I think that is the one big, and thank you Ramesh for pointing that out, that the poor and the most vulnerable are going to be affected the most. Sultan Hussain is asking, why buffalo, why not cow? There are two answers, Sultan. One is that cow slaughter is actually already banned in most of our states. In only 8 states, with some clauses, is the slaughter of cow allowed.
There's a limitation of age and this thing.
So states like Kerala, West Bengal, Assam, they allow slaughter of cows, but most states don't allow slaughter of cows. The other point with buffalo and why buffalo is important is because buffalo is fueling a $5 billion buffalo meat industry. It's fueling the leather industry and a whole set of other industries that uses buffalo hide. But coming back to the big point, I think that sort of takeaway that I have from this is that the poor and the vulnerable are going to be affected the most. So these are the Dalit workers who work in leather industries in Kanpur. These are the people who work in tanneries, in animal hide industry. And I think only for their sake, if not for anything else, is there need to be sort of broad introspection about what decisions one is taking before any sort of implementation of this.
Absolutely. So, see, we allow, like for instance, Uttar Pradesh is the largest exporter, right?
Yeah.
It has the largest number of highly mechanized, very modern abattoirs. Yeah. We did some stories, we visited those abattoirs. Very clinical and very, scientific way of slaughtering and exporting, packaging, everything. Yeah. So, I'm saying if you can put in more of those industries, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Put in more of these very, government regulated, which adhere to all your laws and bylaws, and put them in. Let people, as I said, let them have their own farms. Yeah. Let people voluntarily go and deposit milch animals which are of no use anymore. Or see, end of the day, in ancient times, let's go back a bit. Let's go back a bit. How did it operate? The same poor Dalits and the people dealing with leather, they would wait, the cow would die, they would be called in to haul it away, they would take it outside the village, skin it, and make use of the various whatever. Then the people in the village would get their shoes made from these same people. I'm just telling you from in Eastern UP, I've seen this happening, right? So why are we suddenly trying to reinvent the whole how society was coexisting, right? So yes, if you're going to move forward, let's do it in a more mechanized way, in the more scientific way, and let everybody be happy is how I would look at it.
And this whole hidden cost of just maintaining an old animal, I think nobody has any estimate. Some people say it's 40,000 rupees, 1 lakh rupees to just maintain old animals that have stopped giving milk, etc. But just wrapping up, I don't think we've seen the last of this cattle slaughter ban. The big points coming out of this is one, in terms of the government rethinking the slaughter of buffalo, because buffalo is a huge or feeds a huge industry. The other thing is in terms of the kind of states who have
the political fallout of it. There's been very strong voice from Kerala and West Bengal, the strong opposition. The Puducherry CM has written. The West Bengal CM has written. So it's going to spread to more states where people survive or subsist on this industry. So the center will, I'm sure, definitely look into these aspects.
And the final question is in terms of whether this is our fundamental right, whether this is our right to eat what we want and to not have other people tell us what we want to eat. Thank you all for joining us. If you've liked the discussion, keep commenting on this, keep sharing this video, keep telling your friends, liking it. And thank you all. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.